Hong Kong does not rank very highly. We're going to discuss the new measures that Hong Kong has announced, including tax relief and welfare spending. And they've announced these to try and offset the impact of last year's protests. Lower and middle income workers and businesses were disrupted by those demonstrations. And CCTV's Cathy Yang has been following this. She's joining us live with more. And Cathy, it looks like some of the government's measures include handouts to really stimulate the economy after that GDP report.
That's right, Michelle, and it's a near 70% jump in the so-called sweeteners that the government is handing out to Hong Kong residents. In his annual budget address, Hong Kong Financial Secretary John Tsang announced $4.4 billion of relief measures, and he explained why it's important to rebuild confidence.
Prolonged political bickering is detrimental to public administration and the international image of Hong Kong as a stable, law-abiding and efficient city. It may even dampen investors' confidence in Hong Kong.
The new steps include a cut in personal and business taxes, larger child allowances, and a waiver on property taxes. Tsang says the measures are aimed at easing financial burdens, stabilizing the economy, and keeping people employed. It's especially targeted at the lower and middle income residents as well as businesses. Michelle, you know, officials here have been handing out these pamphlets in an easy to understand format, really, explaining some of the sweeteners that I've been talking about in an easy to understand format with all the diagrams and drawings, because they really want everyone to know that the government cares about its people. In the past years, the residents have come to expect one-time handouts from the government to stimulate the economy. The latest move follows the city's pro-democracy protests, which ended in December. Michelle?
Well, Cathy, individuals can certainly hopefully get a clear understanding from those pamphlets, but those demonstrations, they pretty much paralyzed many businesses for the duration of 2 months, particularly in the tourism sector. So what concessions, Cathy, did the government offer to businesses?
You know, there were a couple, Michelle, targeted at those who lost a lot of business, as you mentioned, during the Occupy Central movement, namely the travel agents, hotels, restaurants, and the taxi owners. Tsang announced waiving license fees for half a year for 1,800 travel agents, 2,000 hotels, and more than 25,000 restaurants. The Hong Kong Tourism Board will also get more than $10 million to step up promotion efforts in the coming year. Now, these measures are seen as an olive branch to those who lost a lot of money at the height of the protests. But the big question is, will these steps really make people happier, Michelle? A recent survey taken after the protest indicates residents are the most unhappy people compared to the other Asian cities. In fact, the city's so-called happiness factor has hit a record low, worse than the period during the SARS outbreak. 26-year-old Darren Leung has been living in Hong Kong for 16 years now. He grew up in a small town in Guangdong on the Chinese mainland, so moving to Hong Kong in the late 90s was a big change, but a welcome one. Through the years, though, Darren has observed the city's lack of engagement with ethnic minorities, even as their numbers grew. One reason he thinks Hong Kong is not exactly a happy place to live in.
It's a very interesting place and vibrant city. For me, I think the sense of community or the sense of belonging is very important.
This lack of local identity is just one of the many reasons why Darren thinks Hong Kong ended up at the bottom rankings of Asia's Happiness Survey. According to the latest survey conducted by City University, Hong Kong trails Singapore and Osaka in Japan as the unhappiest of residents in 3 Asian cities. The result surpasses the low in 2003 during the SARS epidemic. It is a new record for Hong Kong.
More than 1,000 respondents were interviewed in each city, with 6 areas covered: politics and society, the economy, public health, leisure, and housing. The timing is also key. The survey was done a month after the Occupy Central movement had ended in December.
Professor Dennis Wong conducted the survey.
Since the Occupying Central incidents, I think, Hong Kong people are feeling very dissatisfied with the government.
Many of those who took part in Occupy Central were tertiary students and the unemployed, two groups who turned out to be the least happy in the survey. Ethnic minority youths were also well represented in the protests, recounts Leung, who is now in the midst of completing a study involving South Asians in Hong Kong. Exacerbating this saddening state is the continued rise in the cost of rent and basic goods, pressuring Hong Kong locals to work longer hours just to pay the bills.
But the most important thing is the relationship between the legislature and also the administrations, and also the government and the people.
The last time Hong Kong turned up happiest was in 2006, says Wong, when the people had a better relationship with the government. As for Darren, he hopes the results of his study would, for a start, help ease the festering discontent in the city. And in that chat I had with Professor Wong, he did point out the needs of Hong Kong residents are evolving, Michelle, from ones that are centered purely on the economy to those that foster political stability. Now, there are those who say the government is apparently listening, which is why the relief measures in the annual budget turned out more generous than in previous years. Michelle?
Cathy, the endless pursuit of happiness. I hope you're happy over there. Thank you so much. As always, Cathy Yang live in Hong Kong.